Hello, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you consent to this being recorded on the and possibly be set on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, that's done. Then I'm Matt, and this is the Matthouse with Lattice, or the Effeminate Degenerate. Could you please give a short summary about yourself?
All right. So I am a intersectional feminist, a socialist, um, a millennial, pretty much everything that the internet hates right now.
A heterosexual?
No. I am a pansexual trans woman.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what the fuck I am. I do know I'm bi or pan.
Mm,
I don't really see a big distinction between both of them.
yeah.
But yeah, so what kind of socialist?
Um, I guess I might say kind of a libertarian socialist, council communist, that sort of thing.
Uh,
Um,
council communist like Pannenkoek?
yeah, I empathize a lot with kind of a model of worker-run, worker-managed ownership and a certain amount of decentralization.
Are you closer to them than you are to anarchists?
Uh, but I definitely still say that I'm, a Marxist. I wouldn't say that I'm an anarchist. I mean, the goals of all socialism should be, a stateless, classless society, which, is anarchist and,
Yeah,
communist.
that's.
But
Please
I
go on.
okay. I don't think that anarchism is necessarily the best way to get there. Just jumping in from, late capitalist society straight to stateless classlessness.
Yeah, I agree.
I
So,
think
uh, I don't really know if it's appropriate to say, but you really have a feminine voice.
Oh, thank you.
Did you train that, or?
Well, when I used to be an actor, so it came quite naturally to me to be able to, when expressing my true identity, to use this voice.
I really thought it was your true voice. Uh, or should I say original voice? But yeah, top notch. So, when did you realize you were trans exactly?
That happened about 6 months ago, and it's a rather interesting story. So, are you familiar with the movie The Silence of the Lambs?
You mean the one with Hannibal Lecter?
Yes. But
So,
more specifically, the actual villain of the movie, Hannibal Lecter, is in it. But the main villain of Silence of the Lambs is a character called Buffalo Bill. Now,
yes.
Buffalo Bill is a fairly unsympathetic portrayal of a trans woman. He's a serial killer who, upon being denied medical transition, is trying to create a woman's suit so he can be a woman by kidnapping fat women and then leaving them in a well for a certain amount of time so their skin will sag, and then killing them and cutting off the skin to stitch it into the suit.
Yeah, I don't really think. What time was that movie originally for?
I think it was 1991.
Yeah, those times weren't really known for being good with minorities or even gay people, let alone trans people.
Yeah. Um, but it's certainly interesting that uh, I saw this character of Buffalo Bill, and there was something in the plight of, because he actually in the movie isn't actually considered to be properly trans, because he apparently it's not he only goes to transition to escape from himself. You know that everything like it's so you know that he hates himself so much due to some sort of past trauma that he sees going from the opposite of what he is, you know, to a woman as, you know, kind of an escape, you know, his only option. But with Buffalo Bill, I felt a certain. It's weird. There was a scene of him dancing in front of a mirror to the song "Goodbye Horses," and you know, a lot of people tell me it's like a fairly creepy scene. Well, he is wearing like the head, you know, the severed scalp of a woman there. But the thing that I don't know that this character just kind of I found myself in a sort of strange way relating to wanting to become a woman, relating to um, you know, having your to this desire for femininity, and not so much as in a desire to escape myself, but in a desire to express myself. And all of a sudden, you know, even though I'd never actually seen a trans woman on screen before, in this one extremely unsympathetic portrayal from the 90s, suddenly all these confusing thoughts that I've been having myself for years and years and years suddenly clicked, and I realized, no, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to be. This is who I have been all this time, and I've been in denial.
So, did you also have a time you lived as a quote unquote egg?
Yeah.
How long did that go?
Well, I wasn't a very happy person before I, you know, I came out as trans. I was kind of a kind of sheltered and confused person who was kind of judgmental about the world and about other people, and not very willing to be empathetic, not really very willing to explore new ideals. Now this started to change in high school, and when it did, you know, it was just kind of a fast track to discovering who I really was, and you know, what my what I'd actually been thinking all this time. You know, like during high school, I switched from being kind of a, you know, kind of I went from being a Christian conservative to a socialist who still like really didn't like feminism and
a brocialist.
yeah. And then I you know, I watched Sargon and all that.
Oh and then yeah, me too. I fucking hate that.
Yeah, it lasted for about 6 months, and then when he started going off on Bernie Sanders in like January of 20, like, wow, you're really unhinged, and you know, this illusion of your intellectual superiority is just that. You know, and I started to like fact check his videos, and they seemed to be like completely wrong.
Seemed to be?
Were. And so that like really sped up my disillusion. Eventually, and so I started to move more to the left. Then Charlottesville happened, and I saw like, okay, I was wrong about Nazis. I was wrong about like the kind of free speech thing. You know, so I joined my local anti-fascist group during that time, and you know, went to all sorts of rallies, doing the best I can to, you know, fight off that menace. And then I also, during that time, began to embrace feminism. And so, about in November of last year is when I first opened my Twitter account.
So you were socialist before you were trans?
Yeah.
Okay, and what did you do for your local Antifa exactly?
So I would take notes for them during meetings, and I would attend rallies and kind of stand in solidarity with them as they were. I did participate in some clashes with fascists. I had a piss thrown at me once. I helped deal with kind of people who were coming in, infiltrators kind of thing. Like they would come in the crowd, and you could tell like they were just kind of hoping for like some sort of thing that they could get on camera to use as propaganda to convince liberals about how Antifa is the real fascists.
You mean like that one time they had a NAFTA flag? Like that one?
Yeah, like just sort of like I help deal with those types of people as well. And I do a lot of cooking and cleaning for the events, after people came home from rallies that I also attended.
Okay. Was it free? Is being part of your local Antifa free, or does it have any funds necessary?
Well, it's financed by the membership. So occasionally I would donate some money that I'd earned working small jobs on the side to the cause.
From Antifa to something what's not necessarily unrelated, what is your view on legal weapons?
Legal weapons.
Or if weapons should be legalized?
Weapons. Well, the traditional leftist position is to the working class needs to overthrow the capitalists by force of arms.
Yes.
So that would necessitate an armed working class.
Yes. So I'm pretty much asking if you are like them.
Well, it depends on the situation, right? Because when Marx was writing, he was writing in, I think about like 1860 around, when the military was equipped with
guns.
Yeah, basically the same sort of things that the people would be able to buy.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the military has weapons that are far beyond the price range of the average worker, and have all sorts of equipment that makes the contest far more uneven. Now, I do definitely agree with the socialist position in countries that are more unstable, and such as in Syria right now, I think it would be definitely important to have an armed working class. Same in lots of countries like China, that sort of thing.
Or lots of Middle Eastern countries that are destabilized by the U.S.
Yeah, all those sorts of countries, not only for self-defense in the event of a corrupt government, but it's also important because it's a chance for socialists to take that route. But in the West, I don't necessarily see this opening right now. And I think that, anarchists and organizers especially in France, have shown that you don't necessarily need the latest in machine guns to effectively combat the state.
Yeah. And do you hate the local Antifa for throwing over trash bags?
No.
Yeah, another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that you can debate fascism?
I don't really. Well, it depends. It's an interesting question. Obviously, you can try to debate fascism, but I think it's ultimately a purposeless endeavor. I think that fascism is a weed. It gains from exposure to the air, just kind of
Like
like a
most
fire.
French
You could stamp it
ideologies?
out, or you could expose it to air and feed it sticks. That's what debating fascists does. It gives them, it gives them a platform that they don't deserve, and it puts their perspective in a sort of legitimacy that doesn't deserve.
Do you agree with the view that fascism is simply capitalism, but with the rich actually trying to undermine the workers more?
Um, I think that view has a lot of merit, especially when you look at who is financing, the rise of Hitler in Germany.
Germany.
Or you look at, a lot of the people who were big supporters of Mussolini in Italy and Franco in Spain. Like a lot of these were pretty wealthy industrialists who Hitler attracted through sympathetic rhetoric to them, because he would give a different speech depending on where he was. And upon gaining power, like a lot of Hitler's policies, like about abolishing unions, lowering the minimum wage, privatization. And in fact, the term privatization was coined to describe what Nazi Germany was doing with its public assets.
And it was praised by the conservatives, right, originally?
Well, yeah, Hitler was appointed chancellor by a conservative called Paul von Hindenburg. He was the president at the time, and he took his advice from von Papen, who was the chancellor before Hitler, who said, "Oh, Hitler's stupid. He can be controlled."
So, do you necessarily agree with it, or do you simply think it has merit?
I'd say I agree with it.
Okay. Would you rather have the Communist Party have taken power in Germany?
The KPD.
Yeah.
Well, they had Stalinistic leanings, but I still think that they were not a genocidal force. And
Yeah.
they were definitely preferable to the liberal status quo at the time.
Okay, since I asked that question because one of the biggest arguments for Hitler was not actually that he wasn't a communist.
Yeah, that's what made him appealing to the to conservatives and to liberals in Germany at the time. They're like, well, he may be a bit wacky, but at least he's not a commie.
Yeah. Do you believe that only capitalist nations can turn socialist or communist?
This is an interesting question. So that is the traditional Marxist position that, especially that the most industrialized country would eventually become, would be the first to fall to socialism.
Yeah.
History took a different course with Lenin and.
But Lenin actually tried to implement some sort of capitalism to still somewhat follow regular Marxist way of thought.
Yeah, what's it called? That lasted 10 years.
I don't know either.
Yeah, after the kind of disaster of war communism.
Yeah, the new economic plan or something.
Yeah, well, it's certainly it certainly is easier to to go from, I think, social capitalism to socialism than it would be to just kind of jump from, say, feudalism to socialism, because because socialism is a critique and an alternative and a solution to the contradictions created in capitalist society, not in feudal ones. So it's kind of a bit of an awkward transition, because you're leaping forward.
So, do you agree with it?
Yeah, I think I'd say I agree that socialism really can only come from capitalism. And I think a point in the favor of that argument is that the main base of support for the Bolshevik Party was the industrialist workers. It wasn't the peasantry, who were coming from a very different set of, we're coming from a very different class struggle than the proletariat in Russia.
What's your opinion on Maoism?
Maoism has some interesting ideas. I like the way it proposes revolution. It's quite clever, and it worked quite well. I like the idea of a mass line. I less like some of the more incompetent implementations of Maoist policy in China.
Yeah, we all dislike the bad parts of things.
Like the killing of the sparrows, that did not work out very well.
Yeah.
And the plan for industrialization seemed to have a very kind of like narrow view of economic growth, as in defined by increasing its steel output.
Yeah. What's your thought on Free Ukraine territory?
You mean the one controlled by Nestor Makhno?
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly. I like certainly the element of it that it was worker owned. However, I don't think Nestor Makhno was a good enough of an organizer to really unite Ukraine under his rule. And I think, I definitely don't think he should have been crushed by the Bolsheviks. But I think that Nestor Makhno should have tried to go a bit beyond the kind of small stretch of territory that he had taken to be organized.
He should have tried to take more land?
Well, I mean, if he wanted to seriously, if he wanted to last, aside from being a regional force, you do have to move a bit beyond that kind of small section of Ukraine that he instilled. Now, I understand there are kind of military reasons why he couldn't, such as the fact that he was kind of fighting two wars. He was fighting the White Russians, and he was also fighting the Reds upon occasion, because they had kind of an on-again, off-again alliance with Makhno. Sometimes they'd be enemies, sometimes he'd help them fight the White Russians.
Yeah.
I mean, I prefer the variant of socialism that he was implementing, but I think that because it was anarchist, the worker ownership was somewhat imperiled. It didn't have a chance really. Because and Nestor Makhno's experiment in the Ukraine was anarchist, I don't think it had kind of the staying power and the ability to organize that would have been able to protect the gains that the working class had made in that region long term.
Do you believe the Soviets had more of a staying power if they were the ones in Ukraine instead?
Well, if say Lenin, instead of kind of taking the factories under state control, had left them under worker control, and been more genuine in the in the democracy of the Soviets. That might have been, I think that would have been a better variant of socialism than that practiced by Nestor Makhno, because the USSR eventually, gained to be quite an important and powerful military force, while Nestor Makhno, a good commander and quite solid in his defense of his little region, because it was such a small region, and because of the way he organized the region, it could never really attain the same successes.
What is your opinion on... Oh, sorry, you were continuing, go on.
Sorry?
What was your opinion on the arguments that the USSR was not real communism?
Well, I definitely think it wasn't real
communism,
because communism is a stateless, classless society.
Yeah,
but in terms of the arguments that it wasn't socialist, I'd venture to say that I have it depends on what stage of the USSR we're talking about. Like, obviously, it was becoming more and more capitalist with, what's his name, Gorbachev. And with, under Lenin, obviously, during the new economic plan, he even called it state capitalism. So there we'd say, yeah, that's capitalism. Under Stalin, I'm more sympathetic, and previous and leaders after him, I'm more sympathetic to Trotsky's argument of degenerated worker state. Elements of socialism remained, but there was a fundamental corruption in the organizing classes that prevented it from being, a liberating force for the working class.
Yeah. Do you feel more sympathetic to Trotskyism?
Well, I think that the idea that, you have to attack everyone when, what was it called? A permanent revolution. The idea that, once a socialist gain a hold in one region, they have to immediately go on the offensive in trying to liberate their fellow workers. I don't necessarily think that was such a good idea. Trotsky had a certain organizational and military genius. However, I wasn't too big of a fan of his actions at Kronstadt, and I think that ultimately there are pretty big flaws in Trotskyism. However, I do sympathize a bit more with his critique of Stalin's USSR.
So, what's your top 10 favorite kinds of socialism? Of at least socialist ideologies?
Okay. I suppose I'm sympathetic to communalism. I'm sympathetic to, Luxembourgism. I'm sympathetic to the council communists. I'm sympathetic to libertarian socialism as advocated by Noam Chomsky. I'm sympathetic to socialism as it is practiced by the Zapistas. I'm sympathetic to, because there's a ton of different socialist sects.
Yeah.
You said top 10?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're on like 6 or something.
4 more.
Okay. Let's see. What other brands of socialism? Titoism I like for the worker ownership, less for the military stuff. Nehruism I like for the democracy, less like for the corruption. I'm sympathetic to, let's see, what other brands of socialism are there? I suppose if we can classify this as a separate variety, Eco-socialism is another important one. Yeah. And then I suppose the last few would be Mark, you know, I should have really put Marxism at the top of the list because that's how I identify it. But the last few would be Marxist-Leninism, Trotskyism, and Maoism, and then last Hoxhaism.
So you still sympathize with it?
Well, I mean, I sympathize with the idea that I like the idea that let's see, with Hoxhaism, it's more so. I thought you were asking me to list what socialism I thought was best, from least to worst. So the ones I like the best, the ones I like the worst, as opposed to just naming varieties that I liked.
Yeah, I meant the latter.
Yeah, so that's why Hoxhaism is on the list. I'm not necessarily I'm not a big fan of how he implemented in Albania. If you look at the country, it seems to be extremely stagnant during this period. Although Albania has had a lot of, especially in the 1990s, had tons of trouble with their switch to capitalism.
Yeah. How was that ideology called again for when a global nuclear war will make alien communists come or something?
Hasadism.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hasadism has some elements of a bizarre cult. They also believe that dolphins could speak to humans and that aliens were socialists.
Well, if the aliens were socialists, I better hope that they come and take over.
Yeah. Posadism also was really weird. Like everyone had to listen to what Posad was saying. They would just listen to recordings of his voice and just they had to follow it completely whenever they had meetings. It seems like more of a cult than a genuine sect of socialism.
I mean, I originally thought it was ironic when I heard of it.
No, it's a real thing.
Yeah, I figured it out myself.
Although it's mostly dead.
Yeah, I haven't really spoken to any non-ironic Posadists lately in forever.
Same.
Do you think that Tanky is overused on leftist Twitter?
Well, I mean, tanky and arcady are both overused terms. However, I think the critique it's giving that certain leftists just support, authoritarian action with little regard to whether it actually advances the cause of socialism or not, is a valid criticism, especially of kind of Dengist Twitter.
Would you describe me as a Dengist?
I would describe you as a Dengist. I'd just describe you as a Marxist.
Yeah.
Dengism, I would see, is more the belief that China is currently still socialist and that its leaders are promoting a socialist world, and so China has to be defended from all criticism, and that's anti-imperialism. And it's exhausting, and it doesn't really have anything to do with socialism. I don't really understand how you can call a country socialist when it has private factories, what's it called? Sweatshops, where the workers have to live in the factory, eat in the factory, and there's suicide netting around the factory in case they jump out.
Yeah, neither can I really, but I'd still say that I probably wouldn't like it if the US attacked them.
Yeah, you say you'd prefer them to the US as a world power?
Kinda. because at least China educates the people on Marxism.
Yeah, well, I hope one day that the Chinese people will realize the contradiction between the avowed principles in the party and their current praxis, and will, overthrow them and the current corrupt institutions in China.
Would you say that Maoism was socialist?
Pardon?
Would you say that Maoism was definitely more socialist than China now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm more of a fan of the worker-owned rather than state model of socialism. But at least I get the sense that, there's tons of education drives, tons of industrialization, and definitely organized along a kind of class-conscious line. Even if I think that the certain policies in Mao's China were incompetent and harmed his people quite a bit, it's still quite preferable in many aspects to the China we see today.
Would you rather live in an authoritarian socialist country or a fascist one?
A authoritarian socialist country or a fascist one?
Yeah.
Authoritarian socialist, because at least, on paper, they're more sympathetic to my ideals, and I think that the chance of reform would be thusly greater. While fascism is just a disaster capitalism, being covered up by genocide.
What is your view on the whole debate of whether or not the Holodomor was intentional or not?
Ooh, this is controversial. So what I'll say on the Holodomor is that in my research on the Holodomor, I haven't found evidence that Stalin intentionally committed genocide against the Ukrainian people. I see evidence of a pretty large-scale famine throughout the Soviet Union, concentrated on a certain portion of Ukraine, maybe, but it seems pretty widespread. And there's been no actual records of an attempted genocide on the Ukrainian people. However, I think that the policy was less a cause of the weather and kulak hoarding, a more cause of the incompetent way that Stalin implemented collectivization and just kind of the disregard for human life that the USSR in that moment in history displayed. So I think it was a crime, and he definitely should be considered, that should definitely be frowned upon. But I don't think it's necessarily comparable to the Holocaust.
Yeah, a lot of things socialists do, even unintentional, is often compared to the Holocaust for some whatever reason.
Well, I think we know the reason.
Yeah.
Like, liberalism has a huge vested interest in keeping this both sides thing alive. Violence to the left, violence to the right. Go with me in the moderate center, and we'll carry you to peace, progress, and stability.
Yeah. Do you think about liberals? Do you think that acknowledging the different kinds of moderates is a useful thing to do?
Yeah. Certainly I'm not a fan of the quote-unquote moderate politicians, because there's nothing really moderate about supporting capitalism as they do. But I am definitely sympathetic to having conversations with more center-left sort of people. And I think that the left is shooting itself in the foot if it doesn't, have conversations, and it doesn't, try to understand that not everyone started off as a socialist. And so it's unfair to expect everyone to be immediately aware of all the problems that are going on.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of the more tame James, as I was already all suck then.
Yeah.
should we trust snitches, according to you?
Niches?
Snitches.
Oh, people who talk to police.
Yeah.
Personally, I would never talk to the police, and I don't think that people who talk to the police and report information to the police, should necessarily be welcomed in socialist organizing. However, I think it's important to recognize that people make mistakes, and if, say, something happened like 10 years ago, and you were under threat of, going to a prison where it could be a death sentence to you, that doesn't necessarily make you the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, even then, I would have taken one for the team, and I would have gone to jail. But
not everyone is as brave as you.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily, since I've never been in that situation, it's not necessarily fair of me to judge.
Yeah.
But I honestly, that is what I think I do, and it's what I have tried to do. I don't talk to the police when at any other time. So I definitely think that there has to be a certain amount of sacrifice and activism, and I would be willing to put myself on the line if it meant advancing the cause.
Do you think liberal feminism is a good thing?
Liberal feminism, like Anita Sarkeesian sort of stuff?
More like BuzzFeed sort of stuff.
No, I'd say it's worthy of quite a bit of critique. Admittedly, the understanding that there's oppression in society is a good start to exploring leftist thinking. But I've noticed in liberal feminism, there seems to be a tendency to deny that class is a thing, like that class-based oppression exists. And to me, this is a deep flaw in any kind of feminist activism, especially any that claims to be intersectional. Because if you don't recognize that class is, a form of oppression, if not the greatest form of oppression, then you're kind of a lost cause, and your ability to recognize what's wrong in society and help to change it is quite weakened. I also find that they delve into a lot of I don't like the term identity politics, but, just kind of using identity as a weapon. So
weaponized identity?
Yeah, they weaponize their identity quite a bit. Like the whole thing with Hillary Clinton being a woman, and everyone, all these big name feminists
I'm with her.
Saying, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support each other, or these young women, they just want to get with the guys. That's why they're supporting Bernie Sanders. It was a lot of contempt, and there was a lot of, you have to vote for Hillary Clinton if you're a real feminist. You have to support the woman. Whereas in 2008, Sarah Palin had a decent chance of becoming president if John McCain croaked as he did. I don't have to support that woman. So why should I have to support this woman?
And that's the same people who say that support Ocasio-Cortez?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that, you have to support her because she's a woman of color, no less.
Yeah.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I think she's interested in social democracy, and I think social democracy would help the people of America.
Yeah.
However, I think that the activism of the left needs to go beyond social democracy. It can't just be focused on supporting electoral politics and always apologizing for better politicians. It should be about actively advocating and working to build up from the grassroots the change that we need to see in society.
Oh yeah, I agree. And are there any places you think are good for revolution right now?
right now good for revolution? Well, there's two places where revolution is actually ongoing. I should say about four, maybe five. There's the Maoists in the Philippines, the Maoists in India, and then there's the communist government in Nepal, the socialists of Rojava, and finally the Zapatistas in southern Mexico. As for places that are good for revolution, I'd have to say that right now it would probably have to be somewhere in the global south, like somewhere in India. I think would probably be the best place.
You start to sound a lot like Unruh right now.
Oh, as you know, kind of being a third worldist.
Yes.
No, third worldist. I mean, I hope, like, there's definitely signs that socialism could happen even in the first world, even in like deeply conservative countries like Japan. Like, the Communist Party in Japan got 13% of the vote. Actually, I think a bit more of that in 2013. You know, and they're a pretty major player in the current opposition bloc to the government. So I see socialism as definitely possible in the first world, like in Norway, for instance. The Communist Party in Norway got a seat in parliament for the first time in history. Like, I definitely think there's a lot of grassroots potential even in the West. I just think that because the people of the third world are experiencing the brunt of capitalism, bearing the worst of it, and they are currently also the current centers of manufacturing have been moved to the third world. I think they can best relate to the ideas proposed by Karl Marx, and I think that they are in a better place to advocate against it, because they also don't have that rising far right to deal with as well. So a lot of the energy of the far left is currently, you know, exhausted dealing with far right.
Do you think that the far right is actually intentionally growing or do you think it's just a coincidence?
That the far right is growing at the same time as the far left?
Yes.
I think it is. I think it is intentional on behalf of some people. I think there's lots of, you know, very rich billionaires who've been promoting that variant of world outlook. Like, one need look no further than the media mogul Richard Murdoch to see that that kind of racism and intolerance has a pretty deep grasp on the media and on the thought process of a lot of people. And that thought process is helpful because it keeps people from understanding the deeper contradictions of capitalism. And I think the rising far right is useful to capitalists because it enables the working class to express, you know, their frustrations, gain a government that they think of as radical and transformative when it discriminates against groups they don't like, while at the same time continuing and even ramping up the exploitation.
And even taking up the far left's time because they have to focus on stopping the far right.
Pardon?
I just am saying that the far right growing at the same time might also have the benefit for the capitalists that the far left also have to focus on the far right then.
Yeah, as opposed to organizing against them.
Yes.
That's also a very real possibility. Ultimately, I think that there is also momentum to be gained from fighting the far right. I think that by demonstrating to marginalized groups and to workers that we are standing in favor of their interests, and we stand in solidarity with them, can help forge deep bonds between different marginalized communities in Europe. And these bonds can be, together with class-conscious working class people, could lead to a successful evolution.
Do you think that people like Sargon are intentionally trying to make the world more right-wing, or do you think he just does it for the money?
With Sargon,
Yes.
I think he is ironically somewhat of an ideologue. I think he believes rather incoherent things, and he sees the world as being taken away from him. And a lot of people in his demographic and in his age group feel the same way. And
How old is he again?
I think he's like late 30s, early 40s.
Wow. I'm almost starting to feel sorry for him. A 40-year-old man thinking those shit. And losing a debate to a fascist.
Yeah, like not even like a clever fascist, really, like Richard Spencer is.
The meme of the fascist. Even they think he's a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a bit sad, the spectacle of Sargon of Akkad. Now he's joining UKIP, and that will help split the Conservative vote in the UK.
Well, that's a kind of good thing, right?
Exactly. And that's the sad thing with UK politics. Like, really, more parties you'd think would equal, just more representation of the various perspectives of the populace. But in Britain, I suppose it's useful because it keeps extreme parties from rising to the top, but it does kind of result in a two-party system.
Yeah. In my nation, the Netherlands, we have a lot of left-wing parties and a lot of right-wing parties, but we only have a lot of left-wing parties, but split between a smaller amount of people, and we have a few right-wing parties that gain seats, but those are then a few with a big amount of seats.
Yeah.
So the split between the right and the left is many parties, less seats, and another has more seats but less parties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Netherlands certainly has an interesting system.
Yes.
In terms of democracy. I'd imagine it'd be somewhat chaotic.
Yeah. Was that a cell phone?
Oh, just ignore that. Just someone answering a phone in the background.
Okay. So, how do you think the Council Communist democracy should work?
Ideally, the state would be governed by, kind of a representative democracy based on proportional representation. Well, the everyday business would be based around the direct democracy organized by the workers.
So, work should be so the work should be based on direct democracy, while the state should be indirect, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, well, in Canada, like there's 36 million people. It's kind of pretty hard to run a direct democracy that way. Although the advances in technology will give people, I think, a bit more time to pursue politics if that's their inclination.
What are your hobbies?
I like to read. I like to write. I like to bike and take walks. I play video games.
What kind of?
Kind of video games? I mostly play like Civs, Civilization 4, 5, and 6. I play a lot of Paradox games like Crusader Kings 2, Europa Universalis 4, Heart of Iron 4, Stellaris. It's pretty much my roster.
And what kind of books?
Books. I read a lot of nonfiction and fiction. Right now, I'm reading Manufacturing Consent by
Noah Chomsky?
right now. I'm also reading a book about 100 mistakes that changed history. Mistakes that historical leaders made while they were running their countries and how that impacted history.
I better hope it featured Hitler and his two-front war. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes of Hitler was starting a war on two fronts.
Yeah, Hitler made many errors that led to his defeat. Another was trusting Hermann Göring, who was such an incompetent.
Well, you gotta be nice to Hitler. He was the guy who killed Hitler.
Yeah, we all have to thank him for that. He managed to do one good thing in his life.
Yeah. I'm still sad that they didn't capture him before he did that.
So they could string him up or something.
Yes. Or at least give him a wall where he could shoot himself.
Yeah.
I often realize that a lot of things capitalists, or at least business owners do, tend to make me more quote-unquote tanky. Do you also have those kinds of moments?
Well, when I see reading articles about the conditions in Amazon, when I hear about a thing that irritates me is useless op-eds from kind of liberal outlets like the New York Times.
Yeah.
They have a kind of an atrociously bad opinion section, and whenever I read those, I'm like, I do feel reinforced in my left-wing beliefs.
Yeah, a lot of op-eds are really shit. It's like YouTube comments.
Yeah.
Or Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever other shitty place you can read such things for free.
Yeah, I just don't understand. Like, these are supposed to be clever people, but they just come off as arrogant and stupid and proud of it.
Well, I mean, those kinds of people are popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what's your opinion on the free speech is absolute, bro? Kind of thing.
Well, you mean like free speech absolutists?
Yes.
I think they're silly. I don't think there's anything oppressive about blocking someone on Twitter. I mean, if you're doing it just because they say something you disagree with, I think that makes you a tad sensitive. But it's not censorship. You're still allowed to say whatever you want, just maybe not to them. I don't think it's censorship, or it's really something to be concerned about when you get banned on a forum. If you're, just posting Nazi images and spreading vile ideology, most people don't want to be around that, and they want to have a nice space to have a conversation, not this cancerous cesspit. So there's nothing oppressive to me about banning them either. And, although my preference, but I think that there's also a lot of naive people on the left who just kind of defend, like Alex Jones getting banned. Like, yeah, I don't care that Alex Jones was banned. And ideally, the worker-owned variant of these, big corporations would make the same decision. However, there is something somewhat disturbing about, the power of the corporation to just, kick hundreds and hundreds of people off their platforms at once. Like we saw that on, I think, August 15th of this year. Like, so many people were banned. Like, everyone who had once been had their account suspended on Twitter was banned again. And that got rid of tons and tons of different accounts.
Yes. Do you believe the arguments that since we should defend InfoWars because they also have the potentially could do the same for left-wing sources?
I mean, I don't think it's necessary to defend InfoWars. I think it's necessary to criticize the the corporate power, right, that they're using. I think it's necessary to criticize the authority that corporations have in our society. That doesn't necessarily mean, defend InfoWars or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that they are banning InfoWars in the manner they did is disturbing for left-wing organizers because, they are going to go after people who are criticizing Israel, criticizing the West. I mean, Twitter even goes after people who criticize or make fun of Elon Musk.
Of course.
Yeah, they ban all accounts that have Elon Musk in the header, aside from the one verified one from Elon Musk.
You mean they defend they protect pedo color?
Yeah.
And would you rather work with liberal feminist or non-ITPOL socialist?
Non-liberal socialists and liberal feminists. Well, liberal feminists, I think they need to radicalize their understanding of oppression and embrace class politics as well into an intersectional understanding of society. With liberals in general, I think the problem is that they put way too much faith in kind of regulations and welfare to resolve the contradictions of capitalism, and two, they put way too much. Liberals, they put way too much trust in free speech. Everything can be resolved. No, a platform can't be contaminated by the kinds of people you have on it. Oh no, if you ban someone for a forum, that's literally censorship. I don't know. I do find that a lot of the free speech types, that are just obsessed with free speech and have these really over the top reactions if someone bans them or blocks them, or if any account gets suspended, regardless of whether there's a good reason or not. I think that, I'm not really a big fan of that crowd. But I think that's something else they need to evaluate. They need to have a more nuanced understanding of free speech.
Yeah. So you would rather work with liberal feminists than non-ITPOL socialists?
Than non-feminist socialists?
Yes.
I'd rather work with socialists that weren't feminists than liberal feminists.
Only because they are more extreme and willing to fight the system, or for any other reason?
Well, I think that socialism is one of the most important struggles on the planet right now. The other two being the social struggles against, ethnic, oppressions of all kinds, basically, in terms of identity-based oppressions as opposed to class-based ones. And the other struggle that's extremely important right now is that of climate change. Now, how do we keep our planet from collapsing into, an uninhabitable waste?
Yeah. Since you said you read a lot of books, have you also read any fascist books?
I have not read any fascist books. Um, I intend to one day read them so I can. I hear Mein Kampf is filled with like spelling errors and it's just really badly written.
Yeah, it
But
was also kind of boring when I tried to read. I even tried to listen to the audiobook but couldn't even handle the first 10 minutes.
yeah, I think so it's kind of surprising that I guess it did so well in Germany.
I mean, they gave it to free to literally anyone.
Mm.
Yeah, they gave it to free, and they counted it as a sale, so yeah. It's pretty much the same way Trump gained a lot of book sales.
Mm. Yeah, so it was more of an ego thing than an actual success.
Yes. A kind of cult of personality, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, that's definitely something to be avoided.
Personality cults or
Yeah,
books?
personality cults are extremely detrimental to the cause, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you can appreciate something someone does and maybe even follow the ideology from that person to a T, but don't idolize them.
Recognize that no matter how good someone is, they're always going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And their thought process will be imperfect.
Because they're human.
Mm-hmm.
Ayan, I'm busy. Go.
No, come here.
Please wait a sec. Nee. Er is een interview. Sorry for that.
It's okay.
It was my baby brother.
Mm.
But where are you again?
We were on personality cults.
Yeah. So, what did you say?
I said that, people will always make mistakes because they're only human.
Yeah. Do you think any personality cults are pretty much compensation for often not having a religion?
I think that's an interesting argument. Like Mao was pretty atheistic, but in China, a kind of new religion formed around adoring him. Offering incense at little shrines dedicated to him. It's kind of weird.
Well, if there's one thing I often know is that people always try to keep their daily life the same. So if worshipping God is not okay, why not worship our leader?
Mm. Yeah, I think in regards to atheism, that if atheism wants to win, then it really shouldn't try to enforce atheism, because then people just going to go to religion as a kind of a way to spite the whatever is in charge. It works better just kind of let the advancement of science and social progress take its toll.
Would you say that is religious socialism is a bad thing?
Like kind of like what's it called?
Islam or socialism?
Like liberation theology, like religious socialists.
Yes.
Personally, I'm indifferent to religious socialism. As long as it's advancing socialism, that's my main concern. I don't necessarily think that being religious does too much harm unless they allow religious values to come into the social sphere, interrupting because socialism also has to be liberating for people who are maybe suffering from victimization that isn't related to class, and that if religious socialism is getting in the way of that, like say you have a priest who is for liberation theology but hates gay people and trans people, then that's not good, obviously.
Yes. And what do you think about priests? What do you think about the recent priest scandal?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat expected when you have a huge hierarchical organization that there's going to be, involving men that are expected to be celibate, that you're going to have lots of these sorts of sex scandals and this abuse of children. I think the Catholic Church is a very corrupt institution.
Do you think that those celibate men just often do it because they just want to get off, or because they are pedophiles? We just know that they get a chance in doing that when they are priests.
I think the latter. I think a lot of people become priests so because of the authority and the protection that it gives them. Now there obviously are good priests. There obviously are good bishops, but it's not necessarily. It's a question of hierarchy and whether it's justified. In which case, I don't think that the religious hierarchy of the priesthood is a justified hierarchy, and so I think that we should kind of stand in opposition to it because it creates situations like this.
So
it creates these of
all
power.
priests are bastards.
Yeah. APAB.
APCAB. But what's your about ACAB? What's your opinion on that?
HIV?
No, ACAB. All cops are bastards.
Well, like, it doesn't really matter if they're all evil or not. Their social role is to support capitalism and to defend property. That's why the police exist. And they make themselves even worse by being pretty racist as well.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm pro legalizing weapons is because then people here don't have to rely on cops.
Well, I definitely think that it would be useful to establish a kind of community police from the grassroots to replace this the current police order, and to, instead of enforcing property, to defend the collective and to fight against bigots and whatnot.
Or at least only protect not private, but personal property.
Yeah.
Because personal property does need to be protected.
Definitely. I do believe in personal property, just not in private property.
Yeah. And just so people understand, what's your definition of liberal?
my definition of liberal is I suppose someone who thinks that the problems that they see in society, like say racism, sexism, whatever, can all be resolved with and the kind of the contradictions of capitalism can all be resolved within the framework of capitalism with the help of things like welfare and legal protections.
Oh, liberal here means something different.
Yeah. Also, liberal could be interpreted as someone who is socially progressive but believes in free markets, free speech, and freedom from government control over the individual.
Yeah, the latter definition is pretty close to the shitty corporate government I have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard about how they didn't put the removal of the dividends belasting on any of the manifestos? None of the parties in the government has planned or said anything about it, but because because Shell and other corporations want it, they're going to do it anyway.
Oh, I see. So, just more example of corporate greed infecting that brand of liberalism.
Yeah.
I definitely think that the second brand of liberalism is way worse. Because the first one at least recognizes that the problems exist. The second one doesn't probably think that they are problems and, that the free market will sort them out.
I'm starting to think that the second blend of liberals know that the problems exist, they just don't care.
Yeah, well, that's probably definitely true for at least the donors and the politicians.
Yeah. I still don't really see a logical reason why someone who wouldn't be rich or part of the government would be a liberal.
I think that some people still believe in the kind of delusionary idea of trickle down. If it helps the corporations and the rich, then the wealth will trickle down.
Actually,
the economy will grow, and everyone will be better off.
It's called supply side economics. Trickle down was more of a term created to insult it because it's a fucking stupid idea.
No, it hasn't really worked anywhere.
No, so I think it even has a worse completion rate than they claim socialism has.
Yeah, it is kind of ironic seeing people who say, "Oh, socialism always fails," going around promoting an ideology that's been behind So.
What did you say?
I said, who say socialism never works are promoting an ideology that's been behind the disasters of the past 30 or 40 years or so.
Would you say there's any difference between neoliberalism and the second kind of liberals you mentioned?
The first kind of liberals I mentioned, you could also call them social democrats.
Social liberals.
Yeah.
Social democrats are a bit more to the left than I would put, say, those self-identified liberals.
Yeah, the liberals that are running your country right now, the more centrist, like the free market is best, freedom for the individual from the government, but also like pro-corporate, pro-free trade, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely say that type of liberal is it's bizarre that people still support something that fails so often.
I mean, there's a saying, capitalism works unless you're poor.
um, oh wait, capitalism, what's the, just a second. Oh yeah, the problem with capitalism is that you eventually run out of other people's labor.
What will be the closest to that your Canada ever has?
The most left-wing government that Canada ever had would, I suppose, be that of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who nationalized the oil industry, signed repatriated the Constitution from Britain, legalized abortion and homosexuality, basically established the foundation of Canada's welfare state.
You mean the same Trudeau as right now?
Justin Trudeau is actually descended from that Trudeau.
Oh.
Justin Trudeau is probably the most left-wing we've had since Pierre Elliott Trudeau. The Liberals were in power again, but they were kind of the bad centrist Liberals. Like, not that any Liberal is really good, but social liberalism is at least better than, like, the milquetoast neoliberals that were in power in the 90s and in the mid-2000s in Canada.
What is your view on nuts balls?
Do not like.
Any reason?
Well, I kind of distrust thing that has. I don't like, Nazis.
Yeah.
National Bolsheviks are basically Nazis with slightly different economics.
So, left wing to the left or Strasserist?
Yeah, but still having the awful social policies of the Nazis, which I can't tolerate.
Yeah. Did you celebrate the death of a certain person?
Pardon?
No, McCain.
Oh, McCain. Yeah, I thought the lionization of McCain was really gross. He didn't deserve that praise. He was a warmonger. He didn't deserve to become some sort of weird hero to America. He was just a bad guy.
I'm pretty sure that if Hitler said something negative about Trump, he will be considered a hero as well.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, like championed the human rights and all that. The bar for like liberalism in America is especially bad. Like it's just the bar is so low.
Yeah, I know. I was saying, how do you call a Democrat with racist views?
I'm not a fan of Democrats with racist views. I'm not a fan with anyone with racist views.
No, it's a part of a joke.
Oh, okay. How am I supposed to answer?
Republican. Because they're so similar.
Yeah.
The only difference between the biggest difference between Republicans and Democrats are Democrats don't hate the black as much.
Yeah. The Democrat and the Republican Party are two wings of the one party, really. The party of corporate wealth, power, and greed. One party, the Democrats, represents the, kind of the
left-wing split
kind
of
of
the party.
disposable wealth, the more fluid wealth of the bankers and of Hollywood celebrities. And the Democrat and the Republicans represent the, the more old money living in the Midwest and the South, based on the extraction of natural resources. And both of these parties, fundamentally exist to serve the interests of those two groups of rich people in America.
Yeah. What do we think about the insult limousine socialist?
The who?
Champagne socialist.
Oh, champagne socialist.
Yeah.
Like,
Russell Brand?
well, I mean, I suppose it represents a certain kind of socialist that grew up in a socially privileged position and then still advocates policies that help the working class. But in some aspects, it's kind of like the "but you own an iPhone" though argument.
Yeah. I remember a quote of Russell Brand going something like, "When I was poor and complained about inequality, they called me jealous. When I was rich and I complained about equality, they call me a hypocrite."
Yeah, because they don't ever want it right. That they never want you to win. There's no way to win with these people because they support the hierarchy and they'll just find some way to make it all about what a bad person you are.
Yeah. I'm still really sad to all those poor people who gained an education under socialism. I mean, I could say this, people could probably say the same about the exploitation of the natives, but I think pretty much anyone can agree that capitalism was preferred to whatever system the natives had.
Yeah.
It's still shit that it happens, but capitalism was better than whatever they had.
Mm.
So, have you finished writing anything?
At the moment, like, I've had a few poems written, and I published. Well, one of the poems actually won a contest online and was published by my university.
No.
But in terms of a video script, I'm still working on a response video to not millennial woes, but roaming millennial, responding to her stance on abortion and the issue of pro-life versus not. After that, I think I'll either do a series on racism or capitalism.
Why not both?
Oh yeah, true enough. I mean, it's just a question of which I do first and which is occupying my interest right now.
And which one is it doing right now?
Hmm?
Which one is taking your interest right now?
Well, all this, ICE stuff is going on, but I also think that it's important to, question, like a lot of the stuff that is going on around Trump's policies on, but more than that, it's important to question what led to Trump in the beginning. A lot of people just think that racism started with Trump. No, what needs to happen, what people need to see is that racism, sexism, all these things are systems, and that these systems existed long before Trump.
I mean, all you have to look at is one of the right-wing protests during Obama, and then you see why Trump won.
Yeah, those protests were weird because they thought Obama was a Muslim communist. And now the liberals think that Trump is a gay communist.
I still don't know why they keep calling Russia communist.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the USSR called itself communist.
Yeah, that's just bizarre. And like Putin is not a communist. He's not a socialist. He's not an anti-imperialist. He's just, a guy.
He's anti-Western imperialist.
Mm.
Which, for some people, is really important. Cook the West. But, yeah, what do you think about the liberals using gay as an insult?
I don't think that that's helpful. I think it will alienate gay people from their cause. And moreover, I think it's a lazy joke to make about Trump and Putin.
Yeah, it beats Team Orange though. Do you think tokenism is calling someone a token is a legitimate insult?
If they act as a token, then it's acceptable to call them a token. But it's not acceptable to just insult any random centrist or moderate left or right wing minority as a token. Like I specifically, if people I describe as tokens would be like Imam Talwidi.
You mean Imam of Peace?
Yeah, the Imam of Peace, who's who like pretty openly who endorses like racist talking points.
He isn't even a fucking Imam.
Not only that, but like people like Blair White, Candace Owens, Dave Rubin, I think it's acceptable to call them tokens because they make themselves tokens by weaponizing their identity to support their right-wing ideals.
Do you think that if they weren't gay or trans or minority, they still would gain that much money?
Hmm?
Do you think that if they weren't part of a minority, they would gain that much money?
Probably not. I think it is helpful for their careers to be seen endorsing right-wing positions because the right has more of a fear of looking racist than the left because they know that most people are against open racism nowadays, so they try to hide it behind covert language and dog whistles.
Yeah. So Trump.
Yeah, Trump is more overtly racist. I mean, he hasn't, but I have a sneaking suspicion that even if he went on a whole rant about, the N-word, using the N-word repeatedly, people would still defend him as not racist.
Yeah. Do you have any problems with eating?
Eating?
Yes, I myself really am an impulsive eater, so whenever I feel any kind of strong emotions, I tend to eat.
I wouldn't necessarily say I have problems eating, except that I tend to do it a bit rarely. I just kind of forget that I need to have a lunch or forget that I need to have food, and then I have a little bit of it, and then I keep going with my day.
Well, as long as your stomach isn't killing you, you should be fine.
Mm.
Should North Korea have nukes?
Mm. Pardon?
Should North Korea have nukes?
Well, my position is that either all countries should have nuclear weapons or no country should. With all these countries with every country in the world having nuclear weapons, there's an insurance that they won't be used against that country. And if no countries have nukes and they're just in the hands of, say, an international body, of course, they would have to not. This would have to be after socialism. But if they were just in the hands of an international body, that international body could actually have some authority over the various countries of the world when they disobey, even major ones. But since that's unlikely to happen, I'd say that North Korea that's not the worst thing in the world for them to have nuclear weapons. Because all that means is that America will be in the same situation that North Korea has been in for the last 70 years or so. I mean, I don't like North Korea. I don't like Kim Jong-un. I don't like the government. I don't like its treatment of its people. I don't like its, like Juche. I don't think that invading North Korea is the way to go. And I think if every country in the world had a nuclear weapon, there would be none of this bullying. You know, Trump couldn't bully them with fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen.
Yeah. Are you happy about Korean unification?
Well, yeah, I hope that the Koreas can reunify, although hopefully once they do so, more progressive parties can find their way into South Korean politics as well. I suppose a unified Korea, hopefully it tends towards a more progressive, open direction.
Do you expect it to go more like China and Hong Kong as one state, two politics or two systems?
I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see. I do hope that it's successful.
Yeah, less conflict is better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you say that that third wave feminism is a good thing?
Third wave, I do like third wave feminism way more than the second wave, which I thought was extremely transphobic, often excluding to women of color. And but I think third wave feminism is a good thing. The only thing I'd say with third wave feminism is that it needs to incorporate class a bit more into its analysis of society. And I think that it is a useful tool. Intersectional third wave feminism is a useful tool to go along with socialism.
Yeah. Do you sympathize with
too liberal
anti-ITPOL socialist a little bit?
You mean the ones that are like, oh, all of this is just nonsense. Why don't we care about class? After the war, after the revolution, you can care about these issues. I think that that's an unhelpful stance. Sure, I'd work with people who believe that sort of thing on class issues, but I think feminism is a useful tool for helping to bring minority groups into the left and to helping them, provide answers to the problems they face in our society that aren't necessarily always directly linked with capitalism.
Yeah, but most of the time they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because capitalism is, the economic system which governs our world. Yeah, it's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find, elements of society that are not in some way affected by capitalism.
So, in other words, basically, Marxism and socialism should be intersectionist in nature.
I think so.
Yeah, I kind of agree. But just that we should focus on ending capitalism first.
Well, I definitely think that the anti-capitalist struggle is the main one of our time. But I think that there's no reason why a socialist movement can't promote, can't help other people, by taking on the causes of third wave feminism, by taking on the causes of justice in, all sorts of communities, by fighting for things like protecting the undocumented, protecting religious minorities, defending the rights of women. I think by doing all these things, a socialist movement can gain quite a bit of strength and support from other sectors in society that necessarily wouldn't have heard of anti-capitalism, but because of the solidarity that anti-capitalists are displaying, might be more encouraged to join.
Yeah. Should you punch fascists when they aren't a physical threat?
Well, unless they are like, I think that fascist ideologies are a physical threat to people, and that I understand why some people might want them physically removed, because they're a threat to their existence.
Yes, I agree, but just wanted to see your view.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know that were originally leftists but turned fascist?
I don't know anyone who's a leftist that turned fascist. I know I could have turned fascist had I continued watching Sargon of Akkad, without looking and searching for myself about the answers of the world. I think that there could be no, I actually haven't met a single person that was leftist that turned to a fascist.
Yeah, for some strange reason, I tend to see more fascists that turned leftist.
Mm-hmm. Or liberal turn leftist.
Or
social democrat
turns fascist.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are on the center right on YouTube who seem to be sympathetic to that sort of thing.
But they are center right. Fascism is of course often closer to them.
Yeah.
The same reason why some of them might be more sympathetic to socialism. Do you find it strange that pretty much every side of the spectrum was happy that McCain is dead?
Except centrist liberals.
Yeah, I said every side. Liberals pretty much aren't really a side.
Yeah. I'd say that's somewhat accurate. Most people had little cause to like McCain.
Why would the authoritarian right not like McCain?
Because he saved Obamacare, because he's called out Trump on some of his stuff, being quote unquote unpresidential.
The libertarian left?
The libertarian left would not like McCain because of his bombing campaigns, and because of his opposition to gay rights, drug legalization, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, libertarian left is pretty much the sanest of libertarian right is pretty much the sanest of the right wing. Until they turn fascist themselves.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird thing that all those libertarians turn to fascism.
And that's because libertarianism is kind of contradictory. Capitalism is contradictory, and fascism, at least to them, seems to offer a way to fix it. Fix the contradiction. That's not to say that every libertarian will turn a fascist.
Yeah.
But how many right-wingers are you acquainted with?
Well, I know quite a few online. In personal life, I don't know too many, except maybe like my friend, like some relatives of mine, and my friends of my parents are sometimes right wing. But like among young people, I don't know a single person who's more right wing than centrist.
Center-slide or simply centrist?
Uh, just center.
Okay. I myself only know people who are at most center as well. And that's not even excluding all the older people I know.
Yeah, like the right wing people I know tend to be like in their late 40s to 50s, and they're like family members, like uncles and grandparents.
And are you out to your family members?
I'm out to my parents and sisters, my immediate family, not my extended family for that reason.
Because they're right wingers.
Yeah.
I take it that they aren't the libertarian right.
No, like sometimes it's that they're actually, like, take my grandma for instance. She's like a big supporter of the NDP, which is kind of the Social Democratic Party in Canada. But she's also like quite socially conservative, you know, against gay marriage, against trans people, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I just have my uncle who is like flat out like conservative.
Is conservative the most far right your family has?
Yeah.
Well, that's the good thing, I guess.
Mm.
You're free to ask me any questions now for the last few minutes.
Well, I think that's fine.
Okay. No, this is Madman, the Matthouse, so bye. Would you like it if I also send you the link to this on Twitter?
Yeah, on my YouTube channel, that'd be great.
Okay, would you prefer if I edited some pieces or if I would let it raw?
Just edit the description to them.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been great.
No, thanks. Thanks for being this.
No problem. It's always interesting talking with you, Matt.
Yeah. How often have we talked?
Mostly we talk while we're talking in other groups, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily just you that's talking, it's a bunch of other people as well. But I have always enjoyed your contributions to the discussions.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.